Our story, Part 5, The Man on the Hill. One of the things I learned early on in ministry was this: blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. We had to stay flexible and watch what God was doing. We could not always know ahead of time how He was going to build His church. We just had to look for open doors and be willing to walk through them. So we looked for opportunities to talk about Jesus to anyone who would listen. There was a park in Salt Lake City called Liberty Park. It was one of the main parks in the downtown area, and there were always people there: families, children, people walking dogs, homeless people, and others just passing through. Right in the middle of the park, there was a hill that could be seen from all over. It was not a stage, and there was no pulpit. It was just a natural, open place where people could gather if they wanted to listen. So I started going there on Thursday afternoons. I would stay until it got dark. I would walk to the top of that hill, open my Bible, and begin reading out loud. Then I would talk to whoever came by. At first there may have been only 1 or 2 people sitting there listening. Then 4, then 10. Little by little, it began to grow. Before long, we had a fairly large group coming every Thursday night during the summer months for a Bible study, right there in Liberty Park. It was not a polished church service. It was not organized the way we would normally think of church. It was just people gathering in a park to hear the Bible and hear about Jesus. Families came. Homeless people came. People walking their dogs stopped to listen. Some people came on purpose. Others simply wandered into the sound of the gospel. I tried to preach loud enough for people to hear, but also in a way that was inviting. I wanted them to know that we were not there to argue with them. We were there because Jesus loved them, and we wanted to help them know Him. One evening, I was telling the people about their need for Jesus. I told them that God wanted a personal relationship with them. I told them that if they would give their hearts to Jesus, He would come into their lives, forgive their sins, and begin to change them from the inside out. Then I said, if that is something you want, I am going to ask you, right where you are, to raise your hand, and I will pray for you. I looked around the group, and a couple of hands went up. Then I looked farther across the park. Way off in the distance, sitting at a picnic table, was a man I did not even realize could hear me, and his hand was raised. I led the people in prayer. Jesus, come into my life. Forgive me of my sins. I give my heart to you. Afterward, the man from the picnic table got up and walked over to us. I asked him his story. He told me he was from out of town and was in Salt Lake City for flight training. There was a flight school there, and he was taking special training he needed for a job he wanted. That evening, he had been sitting in the park studying when he heard me preaching, and that night, he gave his heart to Jesus. For the next few months, as long as he was in Salt Lake City, he came to the Tuesday night Bible study. We got to know him, and we watched God begin to work in his life. And that was not the only time. Again and again, we saw God draw people in ways we could never have planned. Someone would be walking a dog. Someone else would just be sitting in the park. Someone would come by out of curiosity and end up hearing the message of the gospel. God was building His church, not just in our living room, but in a park, on a hill, with an open Bible, and whoever would stop long enough to listen. At the same time, our Tuesday night Bible study at home was growing quickly. In a very short time, we realized we could not stay in our living room much longer. We needed a bigger place, a place in the community where we could reach more people. So we began to look, and God gave us the right building at the right time. But we had no idea that our very first Sunday would bring one of the first real challenges we had faced. That is where the next part of the story begins.